Forbes magazine, Scott Gottlieb has a truly important piece there. This law, I mean, this is just unbelievable. And he points out how Obamacare will harm cancer patients. Obamacare is going to degrade medicine, but its ill effects will fall disproportionately on patients with serious conditions, especially those diagnosed with cancer. I hope you'll listen up. The legislation contains provisions that directly target patients with cancer because their care is perceived as costly. And these policies couldn't be more badly timed. We're at a turning point in battling cancer. Doctors are finally able to reliably tailor treatments to the unique genetic composition of each patient's tumor rather than by its location in the body alone. Other new drugs are able to prime out our own immune cells to attack cancers. But Obamacare puts access to this progress at risk. First, Obamacare is going to block the ability of patients to seek out the specialist doctors who are most likely to prescribe these cutting-edge treatments. Obamacare coaxes health plans to reduce spending and health care utilization by limiting the choices patients will have of doctors. This is the primary way that health plans are being cheapened enough to meet Obamacare's strict guidelines on the low value of the coverage that the plans can offer. Folks, this is serious. Furthermore, insurers are barred from using the other tools that they've traditionally employed to keep the costs of policies in check, such as cost sharing, underwriting risks, adjusting premiums and benefits. The only thing that health plans are permitted to do under Obamacare is narrow the networks of providers that they contract with, so you have less and less doctors to choose from. So that's precisely what they're doing. By contracting with fewer providers, insurers can cheapen their coverage by clamping down on what doctors prescribe. This will hit cancer patients especially hard. If consumers go outside the narrow network of doctors that their plans offer, patients will be saddled with heavy coinsurance that can make these options absurdly expensive. While Obamacare caps a person's total out-of-pocket costs, the price of getting care outside your restricted provider network isn't subject to these limits, except for care delivered in an emergency room. Now, if patients see doctors outside their narrow networks, they'll have to pay out of pocket for the care. So you can't even get this insurance. They could be stuck with the entire bill. There are no limits under the law, with the only exception being out-of-network medical care delivered in an emergency room. But cancer patients often need the help of specialized doctors and cancer institutions that won't make it into many of these cheapened networks. The latest cancer drugs, as well as new off-label uses for existing medicines, will also be harder to get. Patients may not be able to see the expert doctors most likely to offer these options. New drugs are also slow to make it onto the treatment pathways that Obamacare plans are using a way to narrow the menu of drugs they cover. See, you're not treated as a human being, as an individual with a unique issue or unique illness or problem. You're in the computer. You're in the system. Next, Obamacare tries to coerce doctors to cut down on their use of costlier drugs and tests by changing the way they're paid. The law uses bundled payments, where doctors get lump sums of money to care for patients with particular medical problems. Now, the idea is to pit the cost of treatments doctors prescribe directly against their earnings and give doctors a potent incentive to use cheaper remedies. But these schemes will slow adoption of new technologies. This summer, Medicare announced $1 billion in healthcare innovation awards to get help in designing these bundled payments for paying doctors to treat different kinds of cancer. Those who bemoan the fact that payment schemes like Medicare's reimbursement formula for injectable drugs give doctors incentive to prescribe more expensive treatments must realize these same economic principles also work in the opposite direction. Paying doctors more to do less will also have consequences on patient care. Incentives to do less can be as bad as an inducement to do more. Finally, Obamacare targets cancer drugs directly by expanding a program called 340B, which siphons money away from drug developers in order to subsidize hospitals. The Obama administration sees the program as a way to prop up the hospitals, a favorite constituency of his, on the dime of less popular drug makers. But the oblique way the money is extracted from drug companies spawns a lot of harmful consequences that are increasing the cost of cancer care and lowering its quality. And it goes on, and we will link to this story. Oh, there's so much to say about this in so little time. Remember the article I read yesterday on Media Matters about the Commerce Clause and all the great things the government does with the FDA and so forth and so on? And what would Mark propose here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, this demonstrates the destructive nature of government intervention in such things as health care. The radical statists would have you to believe it's all good, it's all positive, that we need this intervention all the time. I just read you a column about how Obamacare is going to put cancer patients at greater risk at a time when they need all the help they can get. They're not going to have access to the specialists they need, to the expensive drugs they need, unless they can pay out of pocket some absurd amount because they weren't permitted to purchase the insurance that they might need in such circumstances. Is that the government helping human beings? Is that the government looking out for the middle class? Is that a compassionate government? No, ladies and gentlemen. No. And the government does an awful lot of this. Where's the Food and Drug Administration? It's nowhere. It'll be part of the cost-cutting bureaucracy that the administration will use in its implementation of Obamacare. So when some guy writes, well, we wouldn't have an FDA, or we wouldn't have a this, or we wouldn't have a that, what about circumstances like this? That's the problem. They want the government to do everything and make all these decisions, and you and I don't.